In recent years, we've heard from the left about the term Latinx. And this is a term that did not develop in the Hispanic or Latino community at all. It is a term that was coined by the gay and LGBTQ activists who decided that that is what the Latino and Hispanic people need to be called from here on. So let's digest that for a moment. You have an understanding in modern American society that every group has a right to name itself. Certainly, that's been true. Let's take the example of blacks. If I look at just the time that I've been in the United States, over 40 years, blacks have, you can almost say, changed their name about 4 times. In the 50s and early 60s, it was not uncommon to refer to blacks as, quote, colored people. Amusingly, about 30 years later, I saw the term, and I saw blacks using the term people of color. So colored people, now it's the other way around. It's not colored people, it's people of color. In between were African American. No, we're Afro-American. No, we don't like the African connection. We're black Americans, call us blacks. And so, but throughout this metamorphosis from one name to the other, it was understood that it's blacks who get to decide how they want to be called, and the rest of us will call them that. It's kind of like an individual with a name. Don't call me Karen, my name is Karen. Or I spell it Caryn. And so I just want to ponder for a moment the strangeness of LGBTQ activists deciding we're going to rename the Hispanic community. We don't like the fact that their name seems to be gendered. Latino, Latina. We want gender fluidity. So, you know what, guys? You're now Latinx. Now, interestingly, there's an article by a left-winger, Melissa Ochoa, assistant professor of women and gender studies at St. Louis University. And I think she's realized that this name is very damaging to the left and that it's actually contributing to the exodus of Hispanics from the left and from the Democratic Party. And so she has this article in Salon, which, by the way, had an article, several months ago now, talking about the fact that we must use Latinx. And now they go in the opposite direction with this article. Stop using Latinx if you want to really be inclusive. Now, interestingly, this progressive professor, Melissa Ochoa, doesn't really hammer the point home. She doesn't basically make the point, the obvious point. Listen, where does one group get the chutzpah? Where do you get off telling another whole ethnic group that this is going to be your name that we have come up with, whether you like it or not? Rather, she plants her argument on kind of, I would call it safer ground, duller ground. She basically says, listen, let's just look around and see how many people want to use the name Latinx. And she talks about she goes, even though academics use it all the time, of course, in deference to the woke sensibilities of the left. Even though Merriam-Webster added it to the dictionary in 2018, she goes, the Pew Research study and a bunch of other sources show that only a very small percentage of Latinos and Latinas want to use Latinx. And then she goes on to point out something actually I didn't know, and that is in other countries, where particularly Spanish-speaking countries, the term Latinx has been not only not accepted, it's been roundly rejected. In fact, she says Argentina and Spain have both issued public statements from their government banning the use of Latinx or any gender-neutral variant. These governments have basically said the Spanish language is gendered. And so this notion of coming up with a sort of non-gender, or let's call it transgender here meaning transcending gender, is nonsense, and we have no tolerance for it. And so Melissa Ochoa goes on to argue that, look, when you really look at the way Latinos and Latinas are, they don't use this term. They prefer Hispanic, some prefer Latino, Latina. She goes, actually, in a lot of other countries, people prefer the national label. They prefer, I'm Mexicano, I'm Argentino. But they're not Mexicanex or Argentinex. And so basically, Melissa Ochoa is making an appeal from the left to the left to start moving away. She's basically saying this project of renaming the Hispanics has failed. And, you know, part of what she seems to be saying is we can keep doing it, but the practical effects will be destructive for us. More and more people are going to shy away from us. And so she's calling for an abandonment of Latinx and calling for the left to stop pushing this alien term on people who really don't want it.